The celebrations were loud, the promises even louder. Supporters cheered as the names Kash Patel and Dan Bongino floated through the headlines, cast as the new faces of a so-called revolution inside the FBI. The pitch was simple. These were the men who had gone on every podcast, every show, every platform, vowing to crack open the Epstein files. They spoke of binders, lists, names that would finally be revealed. For years the whispers about who Epstein knew, who he entertained, and who might have crossed dangerous lines hung in the air. Now, with Patel positioned as FBI director and Bongino as his deputy, the expectation was clear. This was the moment the curtain would be pulled back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I want to caution my colleagues on, one-sided violence in this country. We just heard that there were no riots on the right. We're literally sitting in the building where there was a giant riot by supporters of the president, the right. We also heard that only leftists, have said that Trump is a Nazi. In 2016, the current vice president of the United States said, Trump is either a cynical asshole or he's America's Hitler. And so this is the problem. I don't want to have to say this garbage, but you want me to sit here and get painted with one brush, the whole left. No, there are extremes on the left, and there are extremes on the right. And we collectively should tackle that. But to come here and just look at us and say we all support what's going on in the extremes is why we can't solve anything in this building. Director, let me say first, thank you for being here, and my condolences on the loss of your friend. And I'm happy to hear that you want to do more on the social media platforms. It's crazy what's going on the social media platforms. There are so many conspiracy theories on what's going on with Charlie Kirk. Israel assassinated him, right? There are conspiracy theories about your personal social life all day. It is totally rampant. Big names on the right, Candace Owens, right? Talking about how what's been released as far as the dialogue between the perpetrator and his roommate is manufactured by the FBI, manufactured by the administration. It is totally rampant, allowing foreign governments to just perpetrate these platforms, all of these bots, all of the time to weaponize Americans. You see what's going on here? This is a byproduct of all of that. What's going on in the streets is a byproduct of all of that. What's happening is you see people celebrate Luigi Mangione is a byproduct of all of that. And so if we want to do something, then we should talk about Section 230. We should talk about how we're going to make sure that we don't let foreign governments poison our children's mind. And so I will work with you on that, Director.
I'll work with you on 230 any day.
No problem. So now, that was the good part. I want to take your attention back a second, okay? Breaking news. Kash Patel is nominated to be the FBI director. Dan Bongino is nominated to be the number 2 at the FBI. MAGA celebrates, rejoices, bells are ringing out. The team, Patel, Bongino, that sought out every podcast microphone to talk about the Epstein list. The names are finally going to get released. It begins. They produce white binders. Phase 1 with the podcasters. This is not actually one of them, of course. I made this. Your name's on it, right? And the names are going to come out. Pam Bondi says the list is on her desk. Then a memo comes out all of a sudden and says, there's no list. Oh, no phase 2. Phase 2 binders never happen. You said the conspiracy theories around Epstein just aren't true. They never have been. And yesterday, in an answer to Senator Kennedy, you said the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. So according to your testimony yesterday and in this committee, according to the evidence the FBI has, the number of names on the list are 0.
No,
zero.
The index has been released, and the number of people involved in that trafficking operation were charged in 2018.
Other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, your testimony in the Senate and here is that according to the evidence you have, The number of other names is 0.
That were charged based on credible evidence.
Well, who are the other names? Give me the other names that weren't charged.
We are not releasing the names of anyone because the Department of Justice never does that, of anyone that didn't have any credible information to attack them.
Let me move forward. The president has, you've seen the picture of the woman's body with the writing and the president's signature. The president says that's not his. Okay? President says it's not his. The Republican colleagues say it's not his. The administration say it's not his. Will you be opening up an investigation into the Epstein estate for putting out a fake document with the president's signature linking him to the world's largest pedophile ring? Will you be opening that investigation into that?
On what basis?
On what basis? They literally put out a fake document, according to the president, with a fake signature. It's a forgery of the president of the United States signature. That's the basis.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, I look forward to that investigation. Am I over? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your diligence.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair.
And then with the nation watching, the answer landed like a hammer. 0. That one word changed the entire story. Asked directly how many names beyond Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had been charged, Patel's testimony was blunt. According to the FBI, there was no credible evidence to bring charges against anyone else. 0 names, 0 indictments, 0 prosecutions. On paper it sounded definitive, but the word credible is doing heavy lifting here. In the world of government language, credible doesn't mean no one was ever mentioned. It doesn't mean survivors never named powerful figures. It doesn't even mean investigators didn't collect testimony pointing to other people. It means prosecutors didn't think that evidence was strong enough to survive in a courtroom. And that subtle difference transforms the meaning entirely. Imagine you're a survivor, you've risked everything to come forward to speak the names of the people who hurt you. If investigators decide your testimony isn't credible enough, it disappears from the record the public sees. Officially it becomes 0, to survivors it becomes betrayal, and to the public it looks like nothing ever happened. That's the gulf between what's on the record and what's in reality. It's also why so many people feel like they're being lied to. When the Department of Justice insists it cannot release the names of uncharged individuals, it may be protecting itself legally, but morally it leaves a void. Into that void flows suspicion, rumor, and conspiracy. Because people can sense when the whole truth isn't being told. When an answer feels too neat, too final, too empty, it breeds mistrust. And in the Epstein case, mistrust has become the defining feature. That's where the irony cuts the sharpest. Figures like Patel and Bongino once thrived on fueling that mistrust. They hinted at hidden documents, implied lists of elites were about to drop, and built entire followings off the idea that they alone were pushing for exposure. They teased revelations that never came, weaponizing survivor trauma to build political capital. Then when placed under oath, their story collapsed into silence. The binders never existed. The names never materialized. The narrative flipped from the truth will come out to the truth is 0. This is how rumors transform into political weapons. What started as whispers about flight logs and black books became media fodder, campaign fuel, and podcast soundbites. The pain of survivors was converted into content, sold as proof that an establishment conspiracy was hiding the most damning secrets. But when it came time to show the receipts, there was nothing but empty pages. This bait and switch leaves the public more disillusioned than ever. And it leaves survivors erased a second time. But here's the catch. The fact that prosecutors landed on 0 doesn't erase the reality that Epstein moved in powerful circles. His name appeared alongside heads of state, billionaires, academics, and celebrities. Flight logs placed him on private jets with high-profile passengers. Photos captured him mingling with elites at parties and estates. Visitor records showed him entering the homes and offices of people at the very top of society. None of this proves criminal conduct. Not everyone who crossed paths with him committed crimes. But it does prove he was shielded, enabled, and tolerated in spaces where questions should have been asked but weren't. The network around him existed, even if the legal record now pretends it was only 2 people. So when Patel says 0, the question we should ask is 0 what? 0 names the government was willing to charge. 0 names prosecutors were willing to put in court. Or 0 names the Department of Justice is willing to admit publicly. Because each of those answers tells a different story. Survivors, journalists, and advocates suspect the truth is far messier than the official record admits, and every time the government hides behind narrow phrasing, it feeds the belief that powerful people were quietly protected. The hearing took a stranger turn when a senator pressed Patel about a document allegedly signed by the president linking him to Epstein's network. The president denied it was his signature, officials denied it, allies denied it. The senator pushed for an investigation into whether Epstein's estate had circulated forgeries. Suddenly the hearing wasn't about survivors, or accountability, or why the government landed on zero. It became about protecting reputations, chasing down a potential forgery, and defending political figures. Once again the focus slipped away from the core question, who enabled Epstein, and why were they never held accountable? This is the cycle. Each time the Epstein scandal re-emerges, it mutates into a political football. One side accuses the other of covering up. Politicians posture, hearings are held, sound bites are delivered. And then the story devolves into theater about reputations, about partisan point scoring, about conspiracy versus denial. Meanwhile, the people who should be at the center, the survivors, fade from view. Their stories are drowned out by the noise of politics. Their pain is recycled into narratives that generate outrage but not justice. The tragedy here is not only that Epstein preyed on young girls for decades, or that his closest associate was convicted while he escaped true accountability through his death. The tragedy is that the system surrounding him seems built to obscure, to limit, to minimize. Survivors live with the scars every day. Politicians and pundits turn that trauma into theater. And the public is left stranded between official denials and sensationalist rumors, never sure who to believe. So what can we actually do with this reality? First, demand real transparency. That means calling for Inspector General reviews, independent investigations, and survivor-centered processes that don't stop at zero names. We need institutions outside of partisan influence that can examine the evidence and report publicly, without hiding behind legal shields or political motives. Second, resist letting this issue get hijacked by partisan warfare. When the left and right use Epstein as a weapon to bludgeon each other, the real story gets buried under tribal noise. This is not about parties, it's about power and accountability. And third, never lose sight of the survivors. Their voices must remain central. Their courage to come forward is the reason we know as much as we do. To reduce their experiences to binders, lists, or political theater is to betray them all over again. Because zero is not an answer. Zero is a smokescreen. Zero is a legal strategy, not a moral accounting. Behind that word are stories untold, leads unpursued, and names unspoken. Behind that word is a system more interested in protecting itself than in protecting the vulnerable. If we settle for zero, we settle for silence. That's why it matters to keep asking the questions they don't want to answer. Who looked the other way? Who ensured Epstein was protected for so long? How many investigations were quietly closed? How many witnesses dismissed? How many survivors discouraged into silence? Those are the questions that can't be buried under a single number. And those are the questions the public has to keep alive. The story you just heard is not about partisan victories or political revenge. It's about truth versus cover-up, justice versus deflection, survivors versus systems designed to outlast them. If you believe in accountability, if you believe the powerful should play by the same rules as everyone else, then don't let this story fade. Stay engaged, demand transparency, support journalism that digs deeper, and keep pressing your representatives for answers that don't stop at zero. And if you want us to keep investigating, to keep breaking down the records, the testimony, and the evidence that's out there, then help us grow this platform. Subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video so the conversation doesn't die in silence. The more voices that demand the truth, the harder it becomes for anyone to bury it.